ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, hello out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare. If you are joining us for the first time, we would like to welcome you. This is season 5. Where have you been? We've been right here.
Yep.
If you're coming back, then, well, you remember us, and we would like to welcome you back because it's been a long summer and we are back and ready to go. I am here with my co-host and friend, David Horton. Hey, David, how are you doing?
I feel older. I'm 5 years old now. I feel so old. No, it's great. It is great to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we have been able to chat, and so much stuff has gone on, and we'll hopefully cover it somehow.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's jump right into it. What is your topic for our weekend genre-related material?
Weekend genre. I know it's August and everything else, but I finally got to see, or attempt to see, I guess that's the best way of saying it, Moon Knight, the new series, or the series. It came out early in the year, but the Disney Marvel sort of series, and this one was such a departure. It's interesting that I think it came out around the same time as Morbius or
Morbius, the film. Yeah,
right, the film.
There's an R in it.
that tanked, that got really bad reviews.
I hate it too because I really liked the comics when I was young, so I hate.
Well, one of the, I saw the trailers for Moon Knight, and I've been putting it off because they just don't look interesting to me. I'm just like, big deal, don't care. I was intrigued because Buck, one of our big Patreons and who supports us and everything, he said it was his favorite series of comic books as a kid.
Oh, comics. Okay.
He loved Moon Knight. So started it. I'm only about just almost to the end. I think I'm 5 episodes in, and it's such a different. I know Marvel is at this super mega giant level now, so they can try new things and do new things and say, yes, this is our, soybeans are what we do most, but if you want to try our candied yams, they're over here,
right.
Kind of thing, which is what the series always used to be. The series have been, look at the difference between Wanda and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, What If, and so Moon Knight is a different palette sort of thing. It's different style of storytelling. It's a different way of doing it. It feels like a horror movie and not like a Marvel movie. If
that's what they say about Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness,
which I still haven't seen. But
me either.
But I can't say I would totally recommend it, but I can't say I wouldn't either, just because Oscar Isaacs is brilliant in it. He basically plays a schizophrenic in it. This guy is hearing voices and imagining things and losing time and all these things. And the way they set it up, because it's almost exclusively from his POV. So when all this weird stuff starts happening, he literally has no clue. And we as the audience don't either. We're like going, what is going on?
Well, you mentioned Marvel trying different things.
Yeah.
They're trying different things visually in this medium. Marvel is so huge and have been around for so long. They did this with the comics already. They would do something as complicated as the Avengers and then do like Howard the Duck, or whatever. Right. So it's not like they're not used to this. We're not used to it, seeing it on television or on film.
Right. And since I never read the comics, any Marvel comics really, so I'm approaching it from just the MCU's kind of perspective.
Right.
How is this visually or as film, television, multimedia kind of thing? How's it working? And I love the fact that they're trying new stuff. Is it always successful? Obviously not. From Morbius,
and it won't be.
But giving different people different things, yay, let's do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And kudos to them for doing it, because we bitch about this all the time, doing the same thing over and over again, do something new and don't repeat, some classic, don't do a remake of something.
Yes, please.
Something
can we
original.
not see another origin story of Spider-Man? We got it. Okay. We know.
Yeah.
So let's
for sure.
What about you? What'd you do this week?
Well, speaking of repeats, this is great. I've been back in the world of Mr. Eli Roth. I watched season 3 of Eli Roth's History of Horror. Now, I have mentioned this to you before because I am really impressed with the research that goes into this. Whoever the guy is that does his writing and production knows his shit. I'm sure that Eli contributes as well, but the best thing about it is our overlap. When I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my God, we've covered that movie. It's just amazing. And it's not just mainstream movies that you expect to be covered. They'll pick something, really bizarre, like Splinter or something that we covered, that nobody else remembers.
Nobody else remembers.
At least Eli does. It's great. And I was going to give a brief synopsis of what basically this show airs, I believe, on AMC in October. It's like a Halloween thing. And season 3, and now they're on Shudder, so that's where I watch them. And apparently he had a sister podcast at one time. I'm not sure if that's still going on, but the episode titles this season were Sequels That Don't Suck.
Oh, good.
Infections, Psychics, Apocalyptic Horror, which of course was my favorite,
of course,
Holiday Horror, and Mad Scientists. So like when they do Mad Scientists, they do The Invisible Man, and we did The Invisible Man. I was like, this is awesome. So I wish we had.
We're tapping into Eli Roth. Maybe
I know. We need to do a little cross promotion here, Eli. Help us out.
Hey, Roth, come on. Yeah, help us.
Anyway, I would highly recommend it. Clearly,
I guess I'm going to have to jump in because it sounds like I would really like it from that perspective. But I still remember like the first season, and I like turned it in, and it was at a table in what looked like the set from Walking Dead. It looked like they were on the set of Walking Dead, like in the kitchen or something. But it was Eli Roth, Rob Zombie,
and Greg
Nicotero. And I went, okay, 3 of my least favorite creators in the world. I'm out. I'm just not. Nope.
What I would do if I were you, I think that's funny. I would start with season 2.
Okay.
And watch through the end. Watch season 3 as well, and then you might want to go back and watch the first season because they changed the format up a little bit.
Okay.
And now there's all kinds of guests on there, like. He'll have Heather Camp or whatever. Oh, and I meant to mention, we've already, we talked about this in something else. Never mind. I was going to say something. Heather Camp is in that new Mike Flanagan series as well.
Yeah.
Midnight is William. Yeah. And William B. Davis from the X-Files. But that was a different show. So I will shut up now.
That was days ago. No,
that was days ago. Yeah.
But yeah, so cool. That's definitely something I'm interested in.
I think you would thoroughly enjoy it from a documentary approach. I mean, you're not as big a horror hound as I am, but I think you would appreciate it. And you would love that they say things that we say, already we've said, it's just kind of fun. It feels very validating. We are not screaming into the void. Other people know this too.
Other people feel like we do. What? That's why we started this. Sort of thing.
So that was my genre week.
Awesome. Well, this is our 5th season premiere. So we need like huge applause or something, fireworks, that sort of thing. It's great. It's awesome that that we've been able to do this and people have been supporting us and all of that. And like you mentioned in the intro, we've got a Patreon channel too. If you guys do want to support us, we'd love to have you do that. I mean, cup of coffee a month, helps
Mhm.
us, keep the website going, sort of
Right.
thing.
And
So,
there's all kinds of bonus material and subscription material on there as well.
yeah.
Some of it's free, some of it's subscription based.
And our
So,
Patreons, the people who do support us that way, they have more input into, what we're going to pick and what we're going to do.
mhm.
We talk to them about any suggestions for what movies, what should we cover, what should we do, we're
Mhm.
branching out. And plus the fact we've got the other sister podcasts, we've got Classic Trek and we've got X-Files on there as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Trek
yeah,
is rearing back up.
rearing back up,
Mhm.
coming back for the season 2 of everything else. And who knows, there's other stuff that we're talking about that's in the works.
Yeah.
But time goes by, and speaking of time, hey, here we are with starting our 5th season with a time
Somewhat time
travel
travel.
bending sci-fi thing. I was trying to remember because I looked back when we were getting ready, prepping for this one, and we began the podcast. Well, our first ever episode in season 1 was just to meet us. That was season 1, episode 1. But episode 2 was probably one of the greatest sci-fi / horror films ever because we did The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2, we opened with The Descent. That was our first episode. Great horror, and a horror movie that a lot of people, don't know or turned on a lot of new people to it. Season 3, we went to science fiction and we did Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the remake, sort of reboot of the series, sort of thing. And
a good reboot. Yeah.
Yes, not the Tim Burton one, the good one. And then last season we opened with Blair Witch. Which was, both of us kind of went, good, bad, whatever. So I started
it's
thinking,
a controversial movie, but it was very popular. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say controversial because one of the things I was going to say was this movie we are covering today, for those of you who didn't even read the title, we are doing Interstellar from 2014. It's written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It's also got writing credits of Jonathan Nolan. It was from Paramount / Warner Brothers, music by Hans Zimmer, a hugely pedigreed cast for it. And it is a little bit controversial because I think there are sci-fi fans who love it. There are sci-fi fans who don't like it. There are sci-fi fans who want to like it but don't understand it. So I think there's a lot of general public people who struggle with it because he wants the Nolans are not averse to taking on bizarre concepts,
right.
Either one of them. And both of them love an intellectual story. And this one is that very heavily. I think you have to follow along with it and figure it out. Before I give any opinion, though, at all on it, I mean, had you seen this movie before?
No, this was my first
really?
time. This is my absolute first time. I have seen Inception, and I confuse it with this movie because they're both one-word titles with the beginning with the letter I. So,
well, and his other big one was Tenet, which is another one-word title. So there you
go.
And
I haven't seen that either. This one I had never seen. I was a little perturbed that when I sat down, it was 3 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say, I watched it in 2 segments or in 2 sections. I watched half and then I watched half the next day. I was thoroughly captivated with the first half of this. I was like, wow, why have I not seen this? I really like it. And I still like the movie overall. But I don't fall into any of those camps you mentioned. I fall into the camp of liking it and not understanding it.
Okay.
I just have to let a lot of hardcore sci-fi flow over me because, I don't know if it's real and could happen. And in this case, I'm assuming it is, but I don't, it's basically physics as some people like Stephen Hawking, I guess, know it. I don't know it. I appreciate it from the whole apocalyptic scenario with the dying planet. And of course, there's a million keys there. But and the fact that they're trying to, save the world. And by doing it, going into outer space and going into a black hole, which is kind of cool, I thought.
Yes,
And I
using
like the cast too.
well, and to be fair, just structurally, their intent was never to go into a black hole. Their intent was to use a wormhole to actually get to another system that would then, unfortunately, does have a black hole. Yeah, I guess. Well, it's interesting that you saw it for the first time. I saw it the first time in a theater, which I would prefer for movies like this because it is huge. It's a large scale film, although you then have to wear headphones to understand McConaughey because he mumbles and whispers like he always does for most of this movie.
You sound like the people that used to bitch about Brando.
Same thing. Well, William Hurt was the same way.
Yeah.
You
got to watch a movie with subtitles like me.
No, you ruin the movie. But I guess closest to me I can say about this film, the way I feel about this film is like Contact. I love the whole beginning of Contact and like the first part of it, but then the last act just got so whatever. For Contact, for me, I think they gave up on a lot of their storytelling and just kind of went with something. And really totally changed the lead character. They changed Jodie, like we talked about, I think, in the podcast. That whole Senate hearing at the end was not the same character as the rest of the movie.
No.
And it made no sense. And this makes no sense just because they truncate time so quickly at the end to tell these massive chunks of stuff. And it's like, okay, I would have preferred less of the cornrows and more of the storytelling here. Than what you've done. For those of you who haven't seen it while you're listening to us, go and watch it right now, and then come back and we'll talk to you about it, and you might have a new perspective. But as a brief little quick synopsis, so basically this is set in the future, the somewhat near future almost, because NASA is still viable, and some of the ship design he tried to keep very similar to what we have now, sort of thing. But Earth's future is not looking good at all. There are huge famine and dust storms, droughts. We're down to basically everything has to be made out of corn because that's all we can grow anymore. The soybeans went away last year, that sort of thing. And so it's a very bleak outlook for mankind. And
Okra's gone. Okra's out.
Yeah, Okra's just plumb out. Yeah. And we are following a family, essentially, of farmers, a father who has lost his wife. He is taking care of his son and daughter, helped by his father-in-law. And he was once a NASA pilot, test pilot. And naturally, there is no more NASA anymore. So he is now a farmer helping out the world as best he can. And his daughter is extremely intelligent, and he is giving her a lot of scientific theory. He defends her a lot, everything else. Anyway, through a series of odd things, let's just say in the beginning of the movie, she thinks she has a ghost in her room. And he says, ghosts don't exist. If there is a ghost and you think so, prove it. So scientifically, theory, prove it. And things start happening. Books come off her shelf in a certain order. At one point, they look and there are lines of dust. Since everything is dust bowl-y sort of feel to it in this, there are lines of dust on her floor in a particular pattern. He uses this to help her and slowly figures out that these lines of dust are coordinates on a map. They go to the coordinates and they find the remnants of NASA. And NASA is, everybody else thinks NASA was disbanded years ago, but no, they have this top secret facility, and they are actually have conducted several missions because it turns out that there is a wormhole that has developed near Jupiter. They don't know why. They don't know where it came from. They don't know who sent it, but some manifestation, they feel like someone sent it. So they have sent 12 missions into this wormhole looking for suitable habitats, another planet, a saving planet for Earth. And they want our Matthew McConaughey character, his name is Cooper. They want Cooper to command the next mission. But the sacrifice of that is it will be years before he returns. So they're estimating anywhere from 2 to 10 years before he comes back, or if he comes back at all, because none of the other 12 missions have come back.
Right.
So he has to try to explain that to his daughter. They have a very, very painful emotional parting where they don't speak. He goes on the mission and all of these things start happening. And then at the very last act of the film, we suddenly tie back into a lot of, like you said, quantum physics and time and travel and fifth dimensional space and a lot of really heady, huge topics that the audience is supposed to just, okay, I'm going along with you, whatever, man. You're flying through bookcases, I guess. I don't know, but it looks cool. I guess you love her, sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder sometimes, do you want to make a movie that's this intellectual to be a blockbuster? Because the average person, this would really confuse, I would think, or maybe even turn off. Does that make sense?
Well, there's a good review out there by Neil Grassi Dyson.
Yeah, he's like the new Hawking, isn't he?
He's like the new Hawking, more like the new Carl Sagan.
Yeah, there
which
you
is
go. That's
kind
better.
of what that's what Contact was based on. That's kind of what this is based on.
Mm-hmm.
But both he and Bill Nye kind of chide a little bit Christopher Nolan because he sticks so true to his science all the way through until the end, and then just kind of throws it away because he has to say this person can literally go through a black hole, which we know is impossible. All of our current physics say that's impossible. You cannot get to, you will not survive a black hole because it literally sucks in everything, including light. So you would be quantumly destroyed. That's what they do. And that was Hawking's theory, and that's what everybody purports. But in this, he actually literally, spoiler alert, he goes into a black hole, even without a spaceship, by the way, goes into a black hole.
Well, they kind of throw it out there that maybe it's something that we don't understand, and don't they tell him to leave the ship or something? They
no, his
tell
ship
him
is his ship. Well,
it's like when they were sitting in the chair in Contact, and it was dangerous because they were sitting in the chair. Once she was out of the chair, it wasn't dangerous.
Could be, yeah, and that's kind of one of my keys is that's a Contact moment to me. It feels like, but the real thing is that they never tell them. I think that's a huge deficit in this movie is that Cooper is the one that says they sent us here. And then later on, when he's talking to TARS, he says, no, they didn't. We did. We sent me back. We are humans.
So it's like a big time loop.
Correct. Humans have evolved to such a state that they're existing in fifth dimensional space, the fifth being time. And they sent all of the things for him to do so that he could do this and ensure the human race kind of thing. So all this was, again, it's that paradox loop of everything is supposed to happen that's happened kind of thing. And you do have to kind of, in the Prestige, I like the fact that in the Prestige, nobody spoon-fed you. He didn't say, this is what this guy was doing. He showed the images and you suddenly had to realize, oh my God, this guy is literally killing himself every trick. He is recreating himself. He's making a copy of himself and then going and killing the original so that he continues to do it. But nobody says that. He just shows it to you visually and you say, okay, wow, that's some pretty heavy stuff. In this one, he doesn't even go that far. He just says, go. I'm not going to explain nothing. You just gotta go.
Is this the second movie we've done of Nolan's, or have we done any more? I was trying to think of that earlier. I know we've done The Prestige, but we haven't.
This is the second of Christopher Nolan. We have talked a lot, just because I love it. We've talked a lot about Westworld, but that's Jonathan Nolan, his brother.
Okay, very good.
And we've not done Dark Knight. We haven't done Memento or any of that. So yes,
they're on the list. We just haven't come to them yet.
Yeah, this is the first Nolan. I mean, the second Nolan we've done that clocks in at a huge 2 hours and 50 minutes long.
Right.
And I mean, I've got tons and tons of notes, but a lot of it sounds like I'm a grumpy old man saying, get off my lawn,
Well,
just because, you know, and I
we
don't want to
can
do
get
that.
back to Contact. I mean, I enjoyed this movie more than I did Contact. I was,
Good.
and
Okay.
what's ironic is that Matthew McConaughey is in both, mumbling. I mean, I think he's a great lead. I've always thought he was a really, really good actor, but I do love the cast as well. And of course, we'll get into some casting. I don't have a lot of alternates, but we'll just talk about them, you know, a little bit because there is such a strong cast.
Sure.
I particularly like that little girl that plays Murph as a little girl.
Yes, I thought she was great.
She's amazing, and she reminds me a lot of my niece, or well, my nephew's child. I guess it'd be a great niece, but anyway.
And I've seen her in some other stuff. I just can't remember. I think she was in. Wait, let me look her up real quick, real fast. She's in The Conjuring.
Oh, that means I've seen her before. Okay, I watched her recently. Then I just didn't remember that it was her. Oh,
okay,
interesting.
Yeah, I first saw her. You would not have, but I first saw her in Twilight series. She's a Renesmee. She's the daughter in the last movie. So, but I thought she was really good in this.
Yeah, I did too.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we're going to continue with the casting,
sure.
She's played by three people at three different stages in life, because as she gets older, she's played by Jessica Chastain.
Yes.
And as she gets really older, she's played by Ellen Burstyn, which, you know, two stellar actresses. Love that. I actually liked the beginning of this film too, when they did the film like interviews with people about how the world was ending.
I loved his bookend structure. I wish it had had just a little bit more at the end, but yeah, I love the whole documentary style of starting it and these people talking, and you're not really, it sets the tone really well. It sets this very depressing 1930s Dust Bowl kind of feel to it. But the fact that there is obviously survivors, because they're doing this documentary talking about it. So they evidently survived in some way. So yeah, I love that. I thought that was a great choice.
Before I continue with casting, did you know that this was originally a Steven Spielberg movie?
No.
Okay.
I did not.
Wow.
What?
I must have done more research than you.
Where did you find that out?
Steven Spielberg was attached to direct this movie in 2006 and hired Jonathan Nolan to write the screenplay.
Interesting.
Yeah. He chose other projects instead. And after his departure, Jonathan suggested it to Christopher. And that's how Christopher Nolan ended up directing this. I forgot to put it in my notes, but I distinctly remember reading that the finished product is drastically different than the Spielberg version. Like males or females, you know, are flipped back and forth, you know, things are opposite and things. I mean, just a lot of differences between this and the version Spielberg was going to do. So anyone out there that's curious and want to know more, because I don't really have this in my notes, you could probably just search under, you know, Spielberg's version of Interstellar to find out more information on it. I would think there's something out there, because obviously IMDb had a little bit about it, or I wouldn't have picked it up. But I thought you would have known that because you're a big Spielberg person.
I am. I was not aware of that.
I would love to see what it was he would have done, because I don't really recall a lot of logic issues in Spielberg films.
No, they tend to be heavily emotional.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They're sometimes overly emotional and manipulative, but they're not usually lacking logic, whereas this one would probably be more lacking logic than emotional.
It's interesting that that's what I think that's what I think this film is actually lacking. It wants me to believe all this emotion at the end, that love is a palatable thing that motivates and yada, yada, yada. And I don't get that. I get it in the one scene, you know, we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but scenes, the scene where he essentially they each watch like 12 years in 5 minutes, because it's just, they're getting the videotapes or the broadcasts from their families. And they each have to watch like 12 years go by in just like 5-10 minutes, sort of thing. And although it's become like a video meme sort of thing, a McConaughey, crying and all of that, it is an emotional point in the movie. And could be, his son essentially being a grown man with a child that he's lost in this time, and he's saying, I'm not going to do this anymore, Dad, because we've never gotten a response, and I don't think you're ever going to come back, kind of thing. I mean, that's got to be just disheartening to this guy who was really doing it to save his family and all of Earth, but definitely his family, kind of thing. So yeah.
We didn't really talk about scenes, and it's funny that you mentioned it, but I want to say that it's a very intellectual concept, you said, but then sometimes when they throw the typical blockbuster elements into it, it feels a little forced. Like when they land on the water planet, there's danger, they gets killed. Or like when they land on the planet and all of a sudden Matt Damon's in the movie, which is a huge surprise, and all of a sudden he ends up being the bad guy, and you're like, this is like you're trying to tell a really intellectual movie, but it's clear that you're throwing in the tropes that'll please audiences.
Yes, very well said, and I agree with that. And I think that's the issue I have with it. This is not a Kubrick movie, even though he wants to. It's obviously, I mean, the biggest key for this entire movie is 2001, of course, right. Even down to Star Child at the end sort of thing, maybe sort of, kind of thing. But he throws in those tropes that you're like going, really? That seems kind of like you're doing that on purpose to flip a switch.
I mean, the whole encounter, I mean, I loved it because it was something audiences are going to like. When Matt Damon and Matthew McConaughey have the conflict and Matt's out to kill him, I'm like, holy shit, he's going to murder this guy. It's a great scene, but I'm not sure how well it fits.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing of we're only going to her planet because she's in love with the guy.
And he lets her do it. Yeah.
Like, why are we going to do that? I mean, just why did you need to throw that element in there? And it might have been better if that had been a surprise element rather than McConaughey Cooper knowing it from the very beginning. It might have been better that they all take a vote, they make a decision, and she's actually hidden that fact from them. And then they find out and they go, wait, we elected to do this, and now you just because you're in love with this dude?
I do like her character though, especially at the end, where you can tell that she knows she screwed up and she wants to make things right.
Yeah, it's not, in my opinion, it's not one of Anne Hathaway's best performances, but that's not her fault. I think that's the character development fault. Yeah, because then at the very end, we're supposed to buy, happy ending. He's going to go see her. Yeah, and they're going to live happily forever. I went, really? Yeah,
their romance interest instantly.
instantly. Go find her. What? Yeah. I haven't even kissed her. Why would I? Even, So again, like your point, that seems like he's flipping that switch or throwing that in there to check a list rather than it being an actual emotional feeling that we want to have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On that water planet, ocean thing they land on or whatever, where the giant tidal waves happen.
Yes.
Is the water only 3 feet deep there and has gigantic waves? Because it seemed to me like the water was really shallow.
Yes, the water is shallow. That's what I think. That's a design element he threw in to show that, alien landscapes can be totally different than what we're used to and what we've seen before.
Because that was strange.
Although it seems like they would have some form of telemetry to tell them that there are literally 7,000-foot waves or whatever on this planet.
It also seems like it would be impossible if the water is so shallow. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, well, and again, it's one of those where he doesn't tell you. He expects you to make your own assumptions or your own leaps or your own logical conclusions. But I don't know if it was that or if because those waves are so huge, they had sucked so much of the water away.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? So maybe that's a conversion or that's a thought or that's a whatever that was happening. But again, that whole sequence was kind of like I'm not really buying this either.
Oh,
You
and the
know?
check. Getting back to the trope checklist. A crew member dies on each planet. It's very Star Trek, actually. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, they should have been in red or something.
Right,
You know?
because
Yeah.
Wes Bentley's character, I can't remember his name, dies on the water planet, and then I'm pretty sure the African American guy dies on the snow planet, doesn't he? Yeah, I think so. Didn't he get blown up?
Well, before that, now he's actually on the ship when Matt Damon's character blows
Right,
the half of the ship away,
right.
sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of plot armor in this. There's a lot of, I mean, Matthew McConaughey just happens to figure out the coordinates, happens to find the place, and happens to be the best pilot that they've ever had. And he's their only chance now. And you got to go with no training. I mean, this guy probably has not flown anything other than a drone,
A tractor.
in decades, or, quite a little while. And yet we're going to space next week, buddy. Good thing you're all prepped and scheduled and ready for that.
Yeah. And he's a little reckless driving through the corn like that.
Yeah, with a flat tire. Yes.
Yeah, with a flat tire. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of cinematography to this movie. It's not shot exactly really well, I don't think.
A lot of CGI.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like really bland, like even the pictures you've got behind you. There's nothing compelling about either of those images. They're very flat. They're very flatly lit. His lensing is very flat.
It's funny that you say that, because when I was searching for images for this movie, I couldn't find any good ones. So that's why you're seeing these that aren't so, spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. But then again, Nolan's not, unless he has a really awesome cinematographer, he doesn't do a lot of great cinematography. Dark Knight tends to be a little bit dark all the way through it, but we kind of live with that because of his storytelling. He does do some really interesting audio work in this movie from a technical perspective. I like the fact that all the space scenes have no sound. When things blow up or engines fire or any of that, there's no sound, which is the way it would be. Like, then again, that's a huge homage to 2001, because 2001 was the same way. But does other stuff that even, and I think this was a Zimmer idea, I realized, but when they are on the water planet, one of the things they have to decide before they go there is that every hour there is a year on Earth. So they need to be careful how long they stay there.
Yeah.
Because
like, hurry up.
Yeah, and that was a hard concept, I think, to get across, so much so that he had like several scenes trying to tell the audience that and how they told it. And then saves the big trick of it, or the big, huge fear of it, or reveal of it, till they get back up and realize 12 years have passed while they've been on this planet. And that guy has been sitting up there for 12 years waiting for them. And you kind of go, wait. And I guess, again, my love-hate relationship with this movie, I guess I do kind of like the fact that then it's up to us as the audience to kind of get used to that, wow, what would 12 years of your life be like? And you just saw literally 10 minutes over here, but now 12 years have gone by.
Yeah, it's insane.
It
makes your head hurt.
Yeah, and it gets really, but what I was saying was, while they're on the planet, from the minute they land on whatever it is, Murphy's planet or Roger's planet, Smith planet, whatever, it's named after the astronaut, there's a click in the soundtrack that keeps going, a clicking. And every click you hear is like an hour of time. And so that, and supposedly the way it's done, if you listen to it, 12 years go by in the clicks that they hear on this planet. It's very interesting that he adds this kind of stopwatch kind of intensity to the whole sequence.
Just imagine how much of your life would pass if you watched this movie. 3 hours, man.
Yeah, I could have had 3 hours of my life back. Yeah.
Right. I can go back into cast if you're ready. We've already talked about Murphy being played by 3 actresses, and of course Matthew McConaughey is Cooper. I think he's pretty strong in this, but then again, I think he's strong in most things that he does, even if he mumbles. We mentioned Anne Hathaway is in this movie as well. She plays Brand, the daughter of the scientist Brand, who is played by Michael, what's his face? Caine.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is the one that recruits Cooper for the mission. And she is his daughter, Anne Hathaway is, and she goes with them. John Lithgow is in this movie. Love him. He plays Donald, Matthew McConaughey's father-in-law.
Yep.
Because we didn't mention out there, probably if you're in the synopsis, I don't think, that he is a single father, that his wife had died, I think cancer, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And he's a single father with 2 kids and a father-in-law, and they live on a farm. Timothy Chalamet plays Tom. I read somewhere on IMDb where he was traumatized because a lot of his part had been cut out of the movie. I was like trying to remember who he is. Who is he?
Well, that's his son.
Oh, is that his son grown up or as a kid? It's as a kid. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, because that guy grown up was, what's his name's brother? I can't think of his name. I've got it in here. Casey Affleck. It's Ben Affleck's brother playing him grown up.
Is the older one with the beard.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Timothy Chalamet is the one with Mackenzie Foy, who plays Murph and Tom.
That's as children. Okay. All right. Now it makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this was long before Timothy Chalamet did that Call Me by Your Name movie, I think, that made him famous. Wasn't that the one that made him famous? The one with Armie Hammer, with the gay relationship. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, and if I'm getting that wrong, people just throw bricks at me. I'm sure you will. Who else? We have this. I don't know this guy, but the school principal reminds me of the scene in the school where they're basically telling Murph that all space travel was fabricated and not real, and that we have never left the planet or gone to the moon, which I found interesting.
I found it very prescient with the past 4 years we have suffered. I found it very prescient that would be something they would accept and just say yes, because
all fake.
Oh yeah, fake news.
Yeah, I've got a key for that later. And then we have Tars was played by Bill Irwin. Did you know that?
Yeah, I kind of recognized the voice halfway through, although I thought one of my notes I have here is I thought the robot voices were terrible, mostly because we didn't know they were robot voices.
Well, I was going to say they're so human that it is hard to distinguish them from the actors. Yes.
And when they get into this whole thing of everybody talking to each other on their headsets, on their spacesuits or whatever, I was going, who the hell is talking?
Who? Yeah.
Because I couldn't tell.
Well, I mean, I knew because I was watching subtitles and it would say Tars.
Oh, well, see, that's not.
Right. Anyway, before I keep going with the cast, what did you think of the robot design? Because I had a problem with it at first.
I think it's weird.
It's very strange.
I mean, I don't mind robots being weirdly designed, like, look at R2D2, sort of thing. I don't mind that. But the fact that then it can get into this weird kind of, I can break my digits off and form arms and carry people, and then I can spin and walk, and it was just no. So if you're going to do it, then there's certain things it can't do.
I think it would have been more fun to make him look like Ash in Alien and make him look human, but still make his body be able to do things like the Terminator, like the
but that
flexible...
would be, he's so stuck in NASA technology right now almost.
That's true. That's true.
Push. I didn't mind Tars and Case, I think was the second one, being able to be integrated into the ship, and slide into panels and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was cool. But this overall rescue her and then roll like your little pinwheel legs do to get back to the ship and lift up in there. No, I didn't buy any of that.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was very CGI.
Yeah.
For sure. I mentioned Wes Bentley played Doyle.
Man, I wish
What?
he'd had a bigger part. I really like Wes Bentley.
I like him too. And we just talked about him last season in the Hunger Games. Remember,
Yep.
I was pointing out that he's in that movie American Beauty, which is what I remembered him from. But he's been around since the late 90s, and you just don't see him that often.
Yep.
He was great. He got killed. Another person that's in this movie just barely, but I recognized him and went, holy shit, that's William Devane. At the very beginning.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we suddenly get all these heavy hitters at this room and they have like 3 lines and then they're not in the movie again.
Right.
It's
right.
like, what?
Michael Caine, I mentioned, played Professor Brand. He has a great scene when he's dying in the hospital. I thought that was really well done. Yeah, you're right. Josh Stewart played Case, but I don't know who Josh Stewart is, but he did the voice for that robot.
Yeah.
We mentioned Casey Affleck and, of course, Jessica Chastain. Oh, Topher Grace is in this movie.
Yeah, he's her boyfriend, right?
Yeah, as they're grown up, as adults. Yeah, he's Jessica Chastain as Murphy's boyfriend, or at least comrade. They work together. Yeah, he's great. Totally surprised by him. And then the biggest surprise of all is all of a sudden Matt Damon is in this movie, and you're like, what the fuck? And what's so weird, and I'll just go ahead and throw it out there as a key, is it's the same plot as The Martian. He is stranded on a planet.
Yep.
And he is the one that they go to on the ice planet because the Anne Hathaway character, I forgot her name, is in love with him, Bran. And then he becomes a bad guy.
Yeah.
The reason, and I do have a note on this as far as his casting. He was not included in promotion for this movie, and
Correct.
His name was not mentioned. He didn't attend any of the premieres. They didn't want to give it away. Except for an article in Variety announcing his casting as an unspecified role, it was kept completely secret through the release of this film.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess that's kind of cool. It was kind of a surprise.
I'm sure it was because they wanted the double fake. You know,
Mhm.
They wanted the, oh my gosh, that's Matt Damon. I didn't even know he was in this movie. And then, oh my God, Matt Damon's a bad guy. He's never a bad guy. He's always born, whatever.
Wait, and he's on Mars growing potatoes.
Yeah.
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 So
Um,
much better movie.
yes. Much better movie.
So
in my opinion, yes, that's true.
I do have some awards, which you're going to probably think is kind of funny because we've basically talked about there's not much to this movie.
Yes.
However, as far as Academy Awards and BAFTA Awards, it won Best Special Effects and Visual Effects for both. And I mean, there are some decent effects, but I don't know.
It does have some brilliant effects. I love a lot of the space stuff, and I love the fact that the space stuff is extremely realistic. It goes back to my whole thing about why I love The Expanse so much.
Mhm.
Them trying, Coop trying to match velocity with a spaceship that is spinning out of control because of an explosion, and then trying to use his rockets to slow it down without ripping both of the ships apart. Is great and very logical, very scientific, very well done. But then he throws other logic just out the window because, I mean, they say that when they land on one of the planets, I can't remember.
I can't remember the names of the planets.
It's either the
water planet, ice planet.
It's either the water planet or not Ben Affleck, the Matt Damon planet.
Matt Damon, yeah. His character name is Man.
Oh, so Man's
M-A-N-N.
Planet.
Yeah.
That's the name of it because they named him after the astronauts.
Right.
But on one of those, and I can't remember which, they say that the gravity is 130 times Earth's gravity. Yet this little bitty rover ranger thing, shuttle, essentially, that they have, can achieve orbit without a booster. I mean, we couldn't do that on Earth. We had to put the whole freaking thing on a great big rocket and shoot it. But this guy just blasts off with thrusters. Little stuff like that bugs the shit out of me.
Right. That's why I said, I can watch it for the emotional things, but I can't I don't know anything as far as the science. Back to your point though about sound being so good on this movie.
Yeah.
It was nominated for sound editing and sound mixing. It just didn't win. So something else came out in 2014 that beat it. I'm not sure what.
That I'd be curious to know what, because that was impressive.
You know, I guess I could start looking those up, but that's work.
But then again, too, people praise this movie for the soundtrack, and I don't find the soundtrack that interesting.
Well, I was just about to say it was nominated for score as well.
Yeah, and it's Hans Zimmer, trying to me, he's, the whole time he's channeling Philip Glass with that electronic thing that Glass always does.
Well, it was nominated both for a BAFTA and an Academy Award for score. So both sides of the world like the music, not just America. And I'll get out of the nominees, but most of the typical things, special effects, cinematography, and design, but it didn't win anything. The only thing it won was best visual effects in both countries, England and the States. And then our friends over at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Saturn Awards gave it several no, actually, I'll take that back. 6. Gave him 6 Saturn Awards. Best science fiction film, best production design, best special effects, best performance by a young actress, and that was Mackenzie Foy. Best writing, Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, and best music. And then it nominated Jessica Chastain, Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, Christopher Nolan, and best editing, and didn't win any of those, but it did win those other 6. But that brings me to another big point, is that this movie is not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die. So I kind of agree with that at this time.
I agree with that this time. I think it should be on the watch if you like to see actors do good performances, because I think all the acting performances, although Anne Hathaway seems a little forced at times, but
cry, Anne, cry.
Yeah. But like you said, the deathbed confession of Brandt, Michael Caine's character,
it's great.
The whole way Matt Damon plays this, waking up and actually seeing another human again after X number of years that he's been there, and then the desperation of, I'm not staying here. No damn way. Screw that noise. I'm going to do whatever I have to leave.
You mentioned Michael Caine. The same with John Lithgow. He has like one scene and he steals it, and it's totally memorable.
Yeah. Well, I like all 3 of his scenes. The 2 with Coop. I like, one of my favorite lines in the movie is when he comes in and Coop and his daughter are sitting there trying to find the coordinates. So they're trying to figure out what the dust, lines are on the floor. And his line is something to the effect of, da, 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 would you mind cleaning that up when you threw prey into it? He walks away. Just because he's a survivor. He's saying pragmatically, stop dreaming, Coop. This is the world we live in. This is what you have to do. And I loved the sequence. I've got to admit, and I wonder if it was the catalyst for the whole movie, the sequence where they intercut the countdown launch with him driving away from Murph, and both of them in such pain that they ended on such a bad note. I mean, he even says before he leaves the room, Murph, don't let me leave this way. Please don't. Everything, and he's upset, she's upset, and he's driving away, and she comes running out, but he can't hear her or see her running out because of the dust. And at the same time, they're counting down to the launch and cutting back and forth to that, and him suddenly being in the ship launching.
Right.
And he doesn't see his daughter for 70 years? Yeah,
she's an old woman in the hospital.
When you think about that in retrospect, and I wonder if that's what, maybe that's what Nolan's intent was to the beginning, is it's not the experience of the movie, it's thinking about it afterwards. When you think about all these time shifts and all these things that these people had to deal with to do.
That brings me to something I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any, like I said, the logic stuff I have to let flow over me sometimes because I don't understand the science. Could it really be with the time travel theories in this movie that it was Matthew McConaughey in the past as the ghost pushing those books off the shelf?
It was.
I mean, could that theoretically happen, or is that just out there?
No, yes. In theory, quantum mechanics explains that, because if you're dealing with 5 dimensions, meaning the 5th dimension is time, time is relative to you. You see it in other science fiction things, like people who say they live in the same timeline continuously all the time. If you think about it, like Q in Star Trek. Some of the other higher beings that I'm trying to think of another good sci-fi example, and I should have given one as a key. But the thought,
this is why I watch maniacs with axes chase teens through the forest.
But so what Coop was essentially doing when he was flying over all the bookcases and everything else was every minute of her bedroom was one of those little slivers, and he can just stop wherever he wants to. They coexist all at the same, quote, time for him. A 5th dimensional being, all of time is all of time. Their meaning of time is the same. So this moment 3,000 years in the future and this moment 80,000 years in the past are all the same. You're looking at them all at the same time. Like you're seeing, like, picture pages in a book. Every page is a different, let's say, year. You'd be able to go whenever you wanted to that year, because you're holding them all there at the same time. So that's the concept, that time isn't a progression. Time just exists as an element, like a dimension, like the 3rd dimension is, like the 2nd dimension is. So you're able to pop down in any dimension, any moment of time you want to, in the scale of your time.
That explains why Jason comes back every movie.
He's just traveling. He's a 5th dimensional being that can come back. Yes, with a hockey mask.
Right,
yes,
right.
That's it.
Well, that's all I have other than keys. Do you?
No, that's all I have. I mean, I have a few issues I haven't mentioned, like I still, Cooper's character at the beginning hasn't flown forever yet. We just throw him into a spaceship and here you go. Hope you don't get nauseous or anything. Hope you're still trained and up to on it and don't have a gut or whatever. The same thing with Matt Damon's character. I mean, he's been on this planet, I guess I think he says at one point it's like 6 years or 8 years or something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of it was in hypersleep. Yeah.
Right. And yet he's just going to, steal a ship and go up there and jump into space. And that's not as easy as they're portraying it in this sort of thing. And then my only other issue kind of thing is I've found Coop's sacrifice to be another one of those moments where they're throwing it in because it's checking off a box or it's emotional or whatever. We know that TARS, so basically, to their last ditch effort to save their mission and at least get to the last planet, is they're going to skirt the black hole in order to get enough speed and fuel to go there. But in order to do that, they have to jettison weight, which is all logical science. That makes sense. And so TARS is going to jettison in the shuttle, and he's going to be consumed by the black hole. They'll have less weight, plus the fact that he can transmit data as long as he possibly can until he's crushed.
So that they can learn about a black hole or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So that's their plan. And they go into it, and Brant's piloting, and they're going, and they're ready to go, and TARS goes away, and you go fine. And then suddenly Cooper goes, and I'm going away too. And you go, what? He goes, yep, it's the only way. We got to have enough weight. Doesn't matter. Bye. No, I love you. No, it would have been great to have, had sex with you. No emotional stuff to it. We're just suddenly thrown into this. And it seemed real abrupt to me and real, like, kind of, we're just doing this to create some emotion.
Well, they were looking at their watch. We've been going 2 hours and 30 minutes now. We have to do something.
We have to have another hook here. Yeah. And then the last thing before keys, and it's a good border for keys, is there is a huge paradox in this movie, because anytime you start dealing with time, if you're not really freaking careful, you're going to have a time paradox.
I mean, that's why most time travel movies are not perfect.
Right.
Even the good ones. Yeah.
And the time paradox in this one is the coordinates for the base, because Cooper is the one who uses the dust and determines the coordinates to himself. And then he interprets it and goes to the coordinates and finds the NASA base, right? But where did the coordinates come from? Because Cooper knew them to do that, but he didn't know them to put them there. So they had to come from somewhere. It's like the watch in Somewhere in Time. Somewhere in Time's biggest paradox is the watch, because it starts with him being, his first play. The old lady shows up, she gives him a pocket watch, and she says, "Come back to me." And he keeps that pocket watch, goes, finds her, she dies, sees the picture, falls in love with her, goes back in time carrying the pocket watch so that he can give it to her before he disappears and goes back into the present. Who made the freaking pocket watch? Where'd it come from?
We need to do that movie. I think it may be on our list.
Oh, that would be a fun one for us to do. I
Yeah.
love that movie.
I love that movie too.
Love that. But so a key for this is paradoxes, which is one of the keys would be Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time. Okay, I will put that down because I did not have that.
What about you? You had some cases?
I do. The first one I thought of, and because of the whole disaster aspect, and because of the, what you just said, sacrifice to yourself. The first thing that pops into my head is Armageddon.
Yeah.
If the world is ending, we got to go out in space and make something happen, or
Very
we're going to
true.
die. And Bruce Willis sacrifices himself to save the world. I'm like, this is Armageddon. It really is.
I had more emotion in that movie when he says, "I'm not going to make that promise." Da, 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 da. And she's touching the screen and, Aerosmith is playing or whatever. But I had more emotion in that than I did.
I don't want to miss a thing.
Maybe they needed to be cliche enough to have Cooper do one last transmission to Murph and say, "I'm sorry," kind of thing. But they didn't. They didn't go for that cliche.
No,
which is weird. But yeah, I think Armageddon's a great one. 2001, of course, is my first one. That's the biggest one.
And it's funny that you say that, but I read in IMDb that it's closer to 2010 than 2001.
Some people would say that, because 2010 is like trying to explain 2001 a lot more, and this one tries to explain so much about black holes or so much about that. So yeah.
But this one, as far as 2001, there is weirdness out on Saturn, and it's the same in this movie. There's a little wormhole out on Saturn. It's very, very similar to 2001. I get that big time.
Yep.
But I have not seen 2010 since I saw it with you in a theater, I think. So I don't remember the connections there. So
there are parts of 2010 I love. I like 2010. That'd be
we may be covering it on this podcast this season. Wouldn't that be ironic?
That'd be ironic. What else do you have?
The Black Hole with Anthony Perkins, Walt Disney.
Oh my God.
There's a black hole in that movie, and there's a black hole in this movie.
There is.
It's just not Disney.
This movie has a black hole and a wormhole in the same freaking movie.
That's true.
Gravity, I have, just because there are some similarities when they are weightless in the particular, in particular scenes, and just that overall desperation of the single astronaut. For this, it's Cooper for a lot of it, but then it becomes Brandt, similar to that. I've got an old one, When Worlds Collide.
Oh,
because that was definitely a comet. That was Armageddon too, but we've got to find a new planet for humanity. And the very last shot is they finally do. They land on the new planet, sort of.
I'm sorry. I was confusing that with This Island Earth. We have not done When Worlds Collide. We've not covered that. Okay.
Correct.
Right.
Another George Powell movie, but yeah, that sort of thing. I did find it interesting that we don't see Earth on another planet at the end of this. We get that Earth has progressed and that they have satellite, they have floating systems, because when Cooper wakes up, he's on Coopertown or whatever it is, where they've built this kind of
I was wondering what that was, like some kind of space station or something.
It's a space station, and they say his daughter
he's in a hospital.
His daughter is coming from another station.
Mm-hmm.
So they've built these floating things out beyond Jupiter,
like colonization things or something. Yeah.
And the big key from that is Rendezvous with Rama. Rendezvous with Rama is the first book that ever established this scientific thought of centrifugally living on the inside of a big tube.
Right.
So up is down and down is up is toward the center sort of thing of this. And the same thing happens in Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is the same way. It's a station that has everything on the inside of the rotating cylinder.
Okay.
So centrifugal gravity is out here, but you can look up and see the other side, which is earth and ground and dirt or another farm or whatever.
So that is an Arthur C. Clarke novel, Rendezvous with Rama, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
That in my notes. Another one. Well, we already mentioned The Martian, obviously, because Matt Damon is stranded on a planet in this one too.
Yep.
However, we didn't mention the one about faking the moon landing, which is Capricorn 1.
Capricorn 1.
Remember that movie?
Yep.
I think that's on our list too, but if I remember right, that's not a very good movie.
It's a television movie. It felt like to me, even though it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, it had O.J. Simpson in it, didn't it? I'm pretty sure O.J. and James Brolin, maybe.
No, I think it's got James Caan in it.
Oh,
James
okay.
Caan, I think it's in Capricorn 1.
I may be right, and I swear I think O.J. Simpson.
No, wait, you're right. I'm thinking of Marooned. Marooned has James Caan and Gregory Peck. Capricorn 1 has James Brolin and O.J.
Simpson.
Yep, you're right. Yep, you're right.
Oh, my memory. And then we mentioned Contact as well. Everything else I lifted from IMDb. This one I thought was interesting. We have not covered this movie. It is on our list. It's one of those movies that I always really, really, really want to like. And every time I watch it, I don't. It is Event Horizon. And apparently there is a wormhole explanation in that movie using paper and pen, exactly as they do it in this film.
Correct.
Which is kind of fun because that was made 20 years earlier.
Well, and several movies have used the whole paper analogy and punching a hole, because it's the best way, I think, to visually explain how warp essentially works in a wormhole. Is you're just cutting that amount of time and distance short by wrapping space, essentially, is the concept. Again, it's more beyond what I can think about, but there's also, I think, in if I remember correctly, because I've only seen that movie once, but in Event Horizon, they actually have a black hole held in their ship. It's actually part of what's helping power their ship is a literal black hole.
And like some satanic being comes through it or something.
Yeah. Dimensional
demons. Dimensional demons.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, that's very Hellraiser now that I think about it. I'm not going to mention them all because I did not write them all down. There were so many, but Christopher Nolan loves to put Easter eggs in everything. There's a little bitty things in everything. Yep. And in this book, the thing that's in there are books on shelves that have to do with things that are going on in this movie, like specific books from history. And the one that I did put down, of course, is Stephen King's The Stand. There is a scene where you can see it on a shelf, and that is about the end of the world and the extinction of the planet and all that. So I thought that was kind of cool. Another one, if you want to stay on the literary term, is there's a poem that Michael Caine keeps reciting almost to the point of obnoxiousness. Do not go gentle into that good night. That is a poem by Dylan Thomas that was lifted for this film. I just came across something I have a huge question for you about that I had no idea. Sure. They talk about a tesseract in this movie. I thought that was a Marvel concept. I didn't realize that was a real thing.
Yeah, no, a Tesseract actually predates Marvel by a long shot.
I didn't know that.
I'm trying to remember the first time I saw it was in a science fiction. It was a short story, and I think it
Yeah,
was
I've got it here.
called-
It's Robert Heinlein's And He Built a Crooked House.
Yes, and that's the first. It's essentially a multi-dimensional space.
Like the cube thing he's in at the end that I have a picture of behind me right now.
Correct. The cube. The cube with all the bookcases, essentially, and all
where he's kind of floating around and looking through little gaps and stuff. Yeah.
And Built a Crooked House, the whole concept was the inside of the space is larger than the outside of the space. So it's kind of like, another key with that would be Harry Potter too, because, they show a little bitty baby like a pup tent, and somebody walks in, and on the inside, it's got like multiple rooms and everything else. That's what the short story was like. And that's what a Tesseract is. It's essentially an 8-sided geometric cube that has more space on the inside of it than the outside of it. It's a 4-dimensional place,
or 5-dimensional. To give you a little perspective on it, I did lift this obviously because I don't know the shit. But Robert Heinlein's story really comes in the center of that theory. The characters mention traveling via Tesseract, which is a multi-dimensional geometric structure, also known as a hypercube, which was coined by Charles Howard Hinton in 1888 in a book called A New Era of Thought.
Yep.
Then we go into the future up to 1941, which is when the Heinlein story came, and that was And He Built a Crooked House. And then later in a 1962 novel called A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle.
Yep.
L'Engle, is that how you say that?
L'Engle,
yeah. So it's been a theory in science fiction books since 1888, apparently. Yeah, it's been going back. I don't even know who Charles Howard Hinton is. Do you?
Nope, never heard of him. But obviously,
maybe his was more science than science fiction. I don't know.
Yeah, he was obviously scientist, not science fiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I've always, even when Marvel started using it and everything else, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool because it is multidimensional.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, I'm trying to, the best way to describe it, how you draw a square and then draw another square and then you connect the lines and suddenly you have a cube.
You got a cube. Mm-hmm.
Now put a cube on the outside of that's connected with the 4 vertices of that one. So you got a cube in a cube.
Mm-hmm.
But that cube in it has more mass than the cube outside.
Okay.
So it's bigger.
Yeah,
so
just hard to conceive.
That's the thought. And then the thought being you additionally add on to that one of those vertices or one of those squares on the outside is time.
Yeah.
Not a physical space.
I have a feeling that all of our fans out there that are science fiction fans are like creaming their jeans right now.
Well, hopefully if we've done anything wrong, they'll correct us too and let us know,
because we are really going geeky here.
We're super geeky, but I think that's what Nolan was wanting. I think
you're right. I think you're right.
Because if you don't understand quantum physics or some form of it, the fact that as we get closer to this planet, because of the gravity and where it is in conjunction with the black hole, time will go faster. And slower for us because we're getting closer to it, which is Newtonian, sort of geometry or the whole Einstein's theory of relativity was that as you approach a black hole or a singularity, time will slow down for you, but it'll keep going here fine, sort of thing. Which is another thing with the watch too.
He puts in like Morse code into like the minute hand. I mean, I don't know how you do that.
Right. And Morse code that then can be translated into quantum physical formula. No, ain't going to happen.
With a little watch.
Possible.
Yeah.
No, not possible. So he does all this pseudoscience over here that's so technical and correct. And then it just throws all this in there. And which is my last key. I think there's a little bit of M. Night Shyamalan in this. He's wanting to have some twists at the end that he's building this whole 2.5, almost 3 hours toward.
Or something to make it relatable. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the ghost was him. That's why her first line is, "I thought you were the ghost."
Easter egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just didn't work for me. I mean, not as well as
no.
I mean, I love Nolan's. I love the Nolan brothers, and I love what they do. I love Joy, Jonathan Nolan's wife. I think she's brilliant, Lisa Joy.
What does she do?
She writes and directs as well. She's done a lot of Westworld with him.
Oh, good.
So yeah, so I love both of them, and I think I do like a heady science fiction. It's just that, I think you should stick to it if you're going to stick to it. Same thing we said about Contact. So Contact would be another good key for this, of course, like you said.
Yeah, maybe go low budget and less, actors, and do more. I mean, don't worry about it being a blockbuster movie.
No, don't worry about the blockbuster or trying to fill in the holes or flip the switches. Instead, tell a story. I mean, Prestige was that way. We had to follow along.
Somewhere in Time's that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Somewhere in Time has period costumes. I guess those might have been expensive, but it's not an expensive movie.
You got to catch up.
Right. Yeah. It's Richard Matheson.
Yeah.
I have several I lifted from IMDb. I will just go through them really quickly.
Sure.
In the NASA secret base, there's a glimpse of a lithograph from the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne.
Oh, okay.
Which is another one of those things that Nolan obviously placed in there for a reason.
Yep.
There are other books out there that you may be more familiar with. The Tesseract scene that we talk about looks like a giant library and apparently bears resemblance to the L space as described in Terry Pratchett's Discworld series.
I've never read Discworld. I've heard about it.
Okay. So it's L space is short for library space, apparently. And that does look like a library he's floating around in, pushing books off. So, John Lithgow appeared in 2010, the year we make contact, a sequel to 2001, and he is also in this movie. So he's kind of connected as a casting key.
He's great in 2010. One of the best characters in it.
Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars makes a friend and ally named Tars Tarkas, which is where they probably lifted the name from. That's what they're saying.
Maybe. I was curious because Tars and Case both on their exterior that have periods, like that is a acronym. Yet I never saw what the acronym was for.
No, I didn't either. You mentioned, or maybe you didn't mention, and I'm going to have to read this verbatim because this is kind of fascinating. What did you mention? Close Encounters, or did we mention that maybe in a prior thing?
Did not mention.
All right. In Close Encounters, an engineer stumbles across a top secret government operation by following a mysterious message. The government rendezvous with aliens when they send map coordinates for humans to follow. In this movie, Matthew McConaughey plays an engineer who receives map coordinates from a mysterious source and follows them to a top secret government operation. Also in both movies, stumbling upon this operation leads directly to him being invited to take part in space flight. Both movies feature a scene in which the main character in his truck is fumbling with maps. Appropriately, Steven Spielberg was the one who originally developed this project. And I told you that at the beginning of this episode.
Wow. That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good key right there that I didn't put together.
I did not either. Nope.
Yeah. We mentioned Rendezvous at Rama, and then lastly, you'll love this one. In Time Stalkers, 1987, a historian researches clues of time travel in the past from a remote, plausible future, which leads him to a top secret military base and hangar. The plot device is similar, although it's a former pilot and later his astrophysicist daughter to this movie. William Devane appears in both.
There we go.
We got another casting key there. And that is all I have.
That's pretty. That's. I'm still stunned over the Spielberg one.
Spielberg one, yeah, I know. That's why I had to read it.
That's really good.
So yeah, and to think that Spielberg originally was attached to this film, I'm really curious. It's one of those things we always say, man, I wish I could talk to Steven Spielberg to find out what was going on in his head, because I would really like to know what the story was behind this and his involvement.
Yeah, and how much of the story, had they broken out before he gave it to Nolan?
Right.
I'd be curious. Yeah, interesting.
But that's all you have?
That's all I got. I'm done. I'm in a black hole.
You're in a black hole. Well, I would like to thank everybody out there for tuning in to this, our first episode of our 5th season of 40 episodes. We would like to thank you for joining us. We would like you to come, if you're on YouTube and you're watching us instead of listening to us like the old-fashioned podcast way, please subscribe. That means so much to us, and it helps us tremendously. If you'd like to hear more of our geekiness, like this was a total geek explosion today, you can tune into Patreon, where we have a lot of bonus episodes, as well as some subscription-based content on Star Trek and the X-Files. Currently, we will probably delve into something else in the future. And until next week, when we will be in Horrorland, and it is Horrorland, I will tell you to go ahead and brace yourself. We'll be seeing you.
All right. See you.
All right. Take care, David.
Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.